Hey peeps, Tyler here with my April book haul. First though, I also got one more A Stranger Dream bookmark. The April bookmark. I'm not part of the book club or anything, but I just bought it separately. So, yeah. On to the books. The physical books I got in April anyway. My name is Asher Lev. Asher Lev is a Ladover Hasid, don't think I said that right, who keeps kosher, prays 3 times a day, and believes in the Rabbono Shel Olam. Don't think I said that right either. My apologies. The master of the universe. Asher Lev is an artist who is compulsively driven to render the world he sees and feels, even if it leads him to blasphemy. In this stirring and often visionary novel, Chaim Potok, my apologies again, I'm probably butchering everything, traces Asher's passage between these two identities, the one consecrated to God, the other subject only to the imagination. Asher Lev grows up in a cloistered Hasidic community in post-war Brooklyn, a world suffused by ritual and revolving around a charismatic Rebbe, but in time, his gift threatens to estrange him from that world and the parents he adores. As it follows his struggle, My Name is Asher Lev becomes a luminous portrait of the artist, by turns heartbreaking and exultant, a modern classic. So, yeah. This sounded absolutely crazy, to be honest with you. Yeah, which means I had to pick it up. UFO of God, The Extraordinary True Story of Chris Bledsoe. But it's been a while since I read the thing, so I don't quite remember. I just know it sounded nuts at the time when I first read it. But anyway. A spiritual journey of missing time, clouds of fire, healings, and transformation. Not sure if it still would sound crazy to me or not, but anyway. Chris Bledsoe, a deeply religious family man and successful business owner from North Carolina, was on the verge of the unthinkable after losing everything in the 2007 financial crisis and suffering from a debilitating chronic disease. Fishing along the banks of the Cape Fear River with 3 co-workers and his teenage son, he walks away from the group and cries out to God in a desperate plea for help. Suddenly, a UFO appears and saves his life and cures him of his illness. No, it still sounds kind of nuts. Experiencing 4 hours of missing time, he returns to his group and finds them troubled. Terrified, they run for their lives as several UFOs chase them home. This is the true story of hope, love, lies, and deception involving NASA, the CIA, a string of professors, and the church. Mind you, I do believe in aliens and I am spiritual. So, yeah, I'll read it and see what I think, I guess. But, where was I? You are about to go on a spiritual journey of awakening with a visit from the Lady, the Vatican remote viewing assassination plot of the Pope, dripping orbs, a burning tree, the Monroe Institute, and healing the son of a Washington, D.C. power broker with ties to the White House. 16 years on, the phenomena still visits the Bledsoe family and affects the lives of people who come in contact with them. Economics in one lesson, the shortest and surest way to understand basic economics. I know nothing about economics. I did see a review that said this was published in the 1940s, and despite being 50 plus years old, is barely out of date. It's a little outdated, but considering how old it is, it should be a lot more outdated. And it's not. That's what a review I saw said. Anyway. Considered among the leading economic thinkers of the Austrian school, Hazlitt has been credited as a fundamental influence on modern advocates of free market capitalism. Concise and instructive, his prescient text dissembles economic fallacies that have become so prevalent they are almost an orthodoxy. Hazlitt's focus on non-governmental solutions, his strongly reasoned anti-deficit position, and his general emphasis on free markets, economic liberty of individuals, and the dangers of government intervention make economics in one lesson every bit as relevant and valuable today as it has been for decades. That's a lot of words I don't understand yet. Front Row at the Trump Show by Jonathan Karl, Chief White House Correspondent for ABC News. We have never seen a president like this, norm-breaking, rule-busting, dangerously reckless to some, and an overdue force for change to others. Jonathan Karl has known Donald Trump longer than any other White House reporter. On these pages, he tells a story only he can tell, from their first encounter behind police lines at Trump Tower in the early 1990s to the first minutes of the Trump presidency in an empty White House, to the question that made impeachment inevitable. Trump has lauded Karl, lectured him in the Oval Office, and screamed profanities at him. These are stories that have never been told, scenes that will become defining moments of the Trump presidency. From the account of the senior advisor who makes the case that mentally ill leaders may be more effective than sane ones, to the detailed description of the president's private dinner with Kim Jong-un. Along the way, there are surreal moments, unlike any experienced by a White House reporter, an impromptu huddle with the president and vice president in the West Wing colonnade minutes before a big story breaks, a hug from Kanye West in the Oval Office, late-night calls from a White House chief of staff. With his front-row seat to history, Karl reveals new details of the most consequential and controversial events of the Trump presidency. He describes the scene in the Lincoln bedroom just after Donald Trump privately praised Confederate generals. He reveals the handwritten note President Trump scrawled on the first resignation letter submitted by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and describes the frantic and previously unknown efforts of the White House press office to pressure Sessions not to recuse himself from the Russian investigation. This book is possible because of the unique relationship Donald Trump has had with Jonathan Karl, a reporter he has praised, fought, and branded an enemy of the people. This is Front Row of the Trump Show. Millennial Nasties, analyzing a decade of brutal horror film violence. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of movies in here that I'm going to have to watch. Torture porn, shock for shock's sake, violence that doesn't serve the plot and characters you hate. What was going on in the 2000s in horror cinema, and why were audiences hungry for it? Millennial Nasties takes a critical but appreciative look at an oft-ignored subset of horror. This book dissects the English-language horror films of the 2000s and the cultural events they were responding to, processing tragedy and war throughout the world, keeping pace with films from other countries, and swinging wildly away from the safe horror of the 1990s. The 2000s brought grisly kills and shocking gore to cinema audiences and home viewers. Films once dismissed as torture porn, their nasty slasher friends, and the remakes of this era have found a new home, and that home is a subgenre called Millennial Nasties. Falling back in love with being human. Letters to Lost Souls. Dear reader, this is a book of love letters to everyone and everything I have ever had trouble holding in my heart. I needed to know that I could love them because that meant I could still love myself. Cheng, Thom, my apologies if I butchered that, grew up a Chinese-Canadian transgender girl in a hostile world. Now an activist, counselor, conflict mediator, and spiritual healer, she's always pursued the same deeply personal mission, to embrace the revolutionary belief that every human being, no matter how hateful or horrible, is intrinsically sacred. But the confluence of the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and cancel culture threatened Thom's belief in the core values she'd built her life around. Justice, hope, love, and healing. Rather than succumb to despair and cynicism, she gathered all her rage and grief and took one last leap of faith. She wrote letters that were prayers, or maybe poems, or perhaps magic spells. She wrote to the outcasts and runaways she calls her kin. She wrote to flawed but nonetheless lovable men, to people with good intentions who harmed their own, to racists and transphobes. What emerges here in the superb collection is a blueprint for falling back in love with being human. Homunculus, Volumes 1 and 2. It's all in your head. Nakoshi Susumu, age 34, lives out of his car. Between spending his days with the homeless and his nights in his vehicle, he has little to his name. When a medical student begins to stalk him, offering to pay Nakoshi a significant sum of cash to undergo a strange surgical procedure, Nakoshi initially refuses. But after his beloved car is towed, he finally agrees to take the offer and subjects himself to the operating table. What, if anything, will Nikoshi see differently once he awakens? Astrology and Past Lives. Astrology and Past Lives is the first book to examine birth charts for previous incarnations. Author Mary Devlin shows you how to interpret past life charts and compare them to your present one. By studying astrological patterns that repeat in chart after chart, lifetime after lifetime, you'll discover that many of your current experiences, relationships, and behaviors are rooted in past experiences. This unique and original book is the result of 10 years of painstaking research and hundreds of case studies. More than 60 charts and corresponding case histories are included here as examples. Some are of ordinary people, others are famous personalities from the past and present. Even if you haven't undergone past life regression, Devlin's interpretations and insights will show you a new way to look at your current birth chart. If you're already familiar with some of your previous personalities, this book will help you see how you're progressing in this lifetime and how you can resolve old issues, work through troublesome areas, develop your potential, and achieve greater wisdom this time around. I also got a stoner coloring book because fun. But I'm gonna have to get high and color these things. This is just a look inside, as it says. I haven't colored anything yet, just showing you a few pages. And last but not least, Spiritual Astrology, A Path to Divine Awakening. With more than 100,000 copies in print and now completely revised and updated, Spiritual Astrology is a simple yet complete astrological guide to understanding life's higher purpose and finding the key to your personal self-expression, self-worth and emotional security, independence and freedom of spirit, emotional ecstasy, self-mastery and personal power. Spiritual Astrology's breakthrough, the startling rediscovery of the importance of the solar and lunar eclipses occurring just before one's birth, reveals the lessons you came here for and provides a revelation to anyone who has ever looked to the zodiac for guidance. Those are my April book haul. Let me know what you bought for April, if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of them. My link tree's in the description, with my Goodreads, Storygraph, stories on Substack, AO3, etc. And also a second YouTube channel if you haven't seen, The Spiritual Crippled Tranny. That's all in my link tree. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to, and have a nice day. Thank you for watching.